Welcome to our regular council session of January 22nd, 2025. I will now call the meeting to order. And the item 1.1 is the territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Before we go any further to item number 2 in the administrative procedural issues, I would ask everyone to rise and observe a moment of silence in memory of Arnold Harrison, the longtime CAO for the municipality of Cumberland, and like the public to know that our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 2, administrative and procedural issues. 2.1, the approval of the agenda. The recommended motion is that the agenda be approved as presented. If I could have a motion to that effect. Moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Lockhart. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much. 2.2, I will draw Council's attention to the declarations of conflict of interest. As per the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, members are required to declare a conflict of interest prior to any discussions on the matter. Thank you. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Gould.
I would like to declare a conflict on 5.3, please.
5.3. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. We will note that on the side of the agenda. Where were we? Okay, we got that one done. 2.3, approval of minutes. The recommended motion is that the minutes of the December 18th, 2024 regular council meeting be approved. Could I have a motion to that effect? Moved by Councillor Telling, seconded by Councillor Fromm. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Recommended motion is that the minutes of the November 13th, 2024 special council meeting be approved. Could I have a motion for that? Thank you. Councillor Lee is moving it, and Councillor Lockhart is a seconder. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Thank you. Motion carried. 2.4, business arising, which is included in your package and will now be reviewed by our CAO, Mr. Herrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Business arising is at Council's package, pages 14 and 15. First page relates to the council meeting from December 18th, 2024. Of the 9 items that are included, I'm happy to say that 8 are complete, and 9th, which is creating a report on the pros and cons around establishing fines for repeat unsightly premises violations, is in progress. I know that report has been drafted. It's not yet in final form. Any questions, Your Worship?
Any questions from council? Hearing none, thank you very much for that report, Mr. Herrick.
You're welcome. Ongoing action list from previous council meetings is at page 15. There are 4 items listed: sale of surplus property, a demolition order, completion of a demolition order, designation of lands in the Swan Creek, easy for me to say, Swan Creek Protected Wilderness Area, and the execution of the Shaw Rural Housing Development Agreement in Spring Hill are all in progress, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that from members of council? Hearing none, we'll move along. 2.5, public hearings. We have 2 public hearings scheduled for today. 2.51 is a public hearing bylaw to amend the LUB 24-14 to rezone PID 2518-9911, 19 McCully Lane, Wards Brook. And before I open the public hearing, we'll go over the rules, so pay attention. I will advise that the public hearing is being held in accordance to the provisions of the Municipal Government Act, and the purpose of the public hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to express their views on certain proposals prior to council making a final decision. The order of this will be that staff will provide a presentation on the proposed bylaw or amendment. The chair, the mayor, will ask staff if any written submissions have been received. Staff will then read or acknowledge any written submissions and advise if there were none or as it required by what's been received. D is, should the public be present? This is where you guys get important part here now. They will now be requested to provide their comments on the issue, keeping in mind that each speaker is permitted to speak only once. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. Greg has the timer. Questions of clarification may be permitted by myself. Following that, the mayor will then ask for any additional comments from the applicant. And the applicant will have, I think, 5 minutes, even though it doesn't say here, as much as 5 minutes, to be fair, to speak on their behalf. The next step is for the mayor to ask for any additional questions from councilors to staff. So there will be no debate between council, just to be clear, and anyone sitting in the audience on any of these matters that are before us today. And further to that, I would ask that there be no debate between proponents on one side or the other, okay? Keep your comments. If you want to speak, come to the chair, take your spot, stay your piece in 5 minutes or less, and we'll move on from there. But please, no back and forth in the gallery, please, or I'll be forced to cancel and adjourn the public hearings, just to be clear. Okay, I will now call the public hearing to order and advise that the public hearing is being held in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Government Act, and that the purpose of the public hearing is to provide the public with the opportunity to express their views on certain proposals prior to council making a final decision. And staff will now provide a presentation on the proposed bylaw or amendment. Director Boone, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, members, council, members of the public, staff. The planning process, which requires a public hearing, I'm going to go over the application, some of the highlights. I know the information's in your package. I will talk about some elements of the development and what we would perceive to be steps going forward, and also looking at process as a whole. So this is a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw and specifically change the zoning, and it's only changing the zoning on a portion of the PID. This PID itself, as you can see on the upper right-hand side of the air photo, the PID is actually divided into two separate zones. Not uncommon in our land use bylaw and our planning documents to have PIDs with multiple designations and or multiple zones. So this application is strictly looking at the area that we're proposing to be commercial recreation, which is on the lower part of the PID. The upper part would remain country residential, which is a zone that would have more restrictions. The plans for this development, it's a conceptual plan only. It's only looking at this particular PID to look at creating 20 campsites, an off-grid camping service and provision and operation. Under the land use bylaw, the current zoning, which is agricultural, would not permit a commercial campsite. So thus the reason for the change and the request to go from agricultural to the commercial recreation zone. Campground, if it was to move forward, would still be required to go through a development permit. But more importantly, if this project was considered at second reading from council and was brought in to do a development permit application, it still requires an approval of a septic system, an on-site sewage disposal system. Regardless of the fact that it's an off-grid, we still require some means of sewage disposal. The campground would be permitted as of right in the commercial recreation zone, but it's limited to 20 campsites. If the development ever went outside of the 20 campsites, it requires another planning process through what we call a site plan agreement, which again is another planning process that's public but very specific to the abutting neighbors within there. Your Worship, obviously, be happy to clarify anything. I'm just going to get the highlights of the process and answer any questions at the end, and I can also advise or answer questions that may come from the public. A final site plan would be required, as I said, at the development permit stage. So the scale of the plan, exact locations of any campsites, if they were looking at putting cabins on the development, they are permitted use in that commercial recreation zone. But all of those items would be required to be put on a very detailed site plan. This is a concept site plan only, and we've had some inquiries on this and been very specific with folks that we would be looking for more details at that stage should it proceed. Exact dimensions of the parking lot and those sites would be detailed. A location certificate would be required in most cases to identify and show where the ordinary high water mark is, because in this case, any development would have to maintain our water course and shoreline buffer requirements. So that would remain in place. And we can ask for a location certificate specifically by a land surveyor to confirm those locations. Simple map, just to reinforce what I mentioned earlier. To the left is the existing zoning. The pit is divided into two current zones, the country residential and the agricultural zone. And we're looking at moving forward to just rezoning the portion that is AG to the our rec zone or the commercial recreation zone. Although this site is zoned as agricultural, been to the site. A lot of it you can see in the picture here on the lower right. A lot of it's had the topsoils removed. Prior to Mr. McCully, the owner of the property, owning the facility, it was used at times as a pit run gravel pit, so a lot of the materials to make it agriculturally viable have been removed from the site. Just to be fair to the process, these cabins that are on the site are on the adjacent PID, not on the PID that's in question, but they are part of the conversation of potentially being relocated to this PID if this rezoning was approved. I will be, just for clarity, that these cabins have not been approved for building permits and have not been approved as what we call fixed roof overnight accommodation. So that's a process under the building code, and that is being dealt with in a separate matter. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've been very clear with the applicant. He has a very good understanding that washrooms would be required on this development. They would be subject to the National Building Code, which is outside the zoning requirements, but I'd like to make sure folks understand that we're doing due diligence even at the zoning stage, which would require, in most cases, it to be accessible washroom. And secondly, on-site sewage disposal systems, septic system, or OSS, will sometimes hear me say that, will be subject to approval from the Department of Environment. So very important that we understand that. At this point, even an off-grid campsite requires facilities because people still use dishwater, they still go to the bathroom, and they still will come with needs for sewage disposal. So it's, regardless if people call them off-grid campgrounds or cabins, you still have to provide facilities, and we've been very clear throughout the process. So, considerations here, environmentally, there has been an application and a investigation on the adjacent PID in respect to Department of Environment and potential alterations to a water course. That's been brought up by a few residents from the area. We have reached out to the Department of Environment. It's an ongoing investigation, an ongoing case, but it's not specific to this property and it's not specific to the rezoning. Just want people to be aware that the adjacent property is owned by the same property owner, and we have asked for information on that file. In order to get detailed information on that, we would have to make a FOIA request. So we have done some due diligence in that respect. As I mentioned, most of the soils have been removed from the site, so we don't think it's outside policy to look at making this a different zone other than agricultural. I think I've mentioned to council before, Your Worship, that we do have times where we have properties that are zoned agricultural just based on soil conditions that were on resource mapping of the past. So not unusual to have AG zones or agricultural zones that may not be appropriate for the location. As I mentioned, the watercourse buffer would have to be maintained when we look at environmental considerations. The septic system I've mentioned a couple times already, so just to reinforce that as part of the process, and that we know that the ongoing investigation on the adjacent property and PID is at play in respect to the property owner developing in this area. So there's no specific financial implications here, Your Worship, from a community engagement process, this public hearing was duly advertised in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. We also have done some additional advertising through the, not just the municipal website as required by the Act, but we also do notification and advertisements on this one through the Chronicle Herald, and we have done advertisements with our public relations officer through our website on multiple occasions, but also through our Facebook site. We did receive one copy of a letter of objection, Your Worship, which we note here in community engagement, and we did receive some additional ones this morning and again just before the meeting. So a little hard for me to comment on those, Your Worship, where they're kind of coming in late. I will reinforce, and it will be the same thing in the next public hearing. Information we receive will become part of the review for any second reading reports that get created after public hearings, and that we will review those in much greater detail in advance of the second reading and that final report. So at this time, it's a public hearing, so no motions to consider. It's an opportunity for me to present so the public can hear it, council can hear it, and an opportunity, as you said, Your Worship, for community to potentially have input. I leave it there, should there be any questions, and I'll do my best, should any of the members of the public speak, to address their concerns.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. Could you ask or outline any written submissions that have been received? I know you've already gone over one, but, and then to clarify, the late ones that arrived will go to council prior to second reading.
Correct, Your Worship. They'll become part of the report, and we'll package them as an addendum or as attachment to the second reading report.
If you give me a summation on that, that would be great.
Yeah. So I can, Your Worship, just mention that, that most of the concerns that we saw in letters, 3 letters from 2 different property owners, obviously their concern around water course conservation and environmental protection were the highlights of those letters. I can say that with quick certainty on that, in that respect, Your Worship, but we'll review those in more detail prior to the second reading report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. Mr. Hurt, shall we make them read that?
So it'll be consistent, we'll just make sure that it's included in the second reading.
Good, thank you very much. Now, is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak about this matter today? Come up to the front, sir. Before you start, I'll ask you to state your name and advise you that once you start speaking, you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Garibaldi. I'm the adjacent property owner.
Oh, hang on one second, sir. We'll get the mic on for you. There we go.
I'd like to first ask a question of clarification through you, Mr. Chair.
I'll try.
The documents that we're looking at that are now on the website, date December 18th, prepared January 7th, why were they only uploaded to the website on the morning of January 15th at 8:45 in the morning?
Mr. Boone.
Sorry, Mr. Bowser. Your Worship, there was an update to the information, so the information was similar to what would have been posted for the first reading. Additional information was posted on the 15th. Just for clarity, in advance of the public hearing, we always update the files the week before they come to council, so then the most up-to-date file is then put in. So first reading, the report is on the website in advance of council, and then we keep the first reading stays up there because the public hearing document comes to council in your package the week, the Thursday prior or Friday prior. So the information would still be relevant in advance of the public hearing. That information for the public hearing will remain on the website during the required appeal period.
So just to be clear, 7 days is the required minimum?
Notice of the public hearing, which was on both Plan Cumberland on our municipal website, that's a requirement of the Municipal Government Act. We keep the first reading reports on the website once they're posted for the first reading, which would have happened, Mr. Bowser, back in December. No public input at that point. And then we update the public hearing report in advance of this public hearing because we don't complete the report until it's ready to go to council package.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir. You now have the floor.
I realize that this is not a meeting for debate, so that if I am in substantial disagreement with the statements of Mr. Boone, I will take that up at a later date. And I trust that Mr. Boone's lengthy reply is not included in my 5 minutes.
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Harrod is on the timer, and he excludes Mr. Boone from his comments are excluded from the 5 minutes. Yes.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Harrod is on the timer, and Mr. Boone's comments at any point in time are excluded from the time.
Thank you. I will say, in general, that I am not opposed to a campsite on this property. However, I am opposed to the owner of this property having a campsite on the property because Mr. McCulley has proven himself many times to be a very poor environmental steward, and he does not respect the environmental regulations that are in place in this province. There are many examples of that.
Excuse us, folks. Thank you. Continue, sir.
I will say, with respect, that the proceedings of the Ministry of the Environment are ongoing, and they are not with respect only to the adjacent PID. I don't know where that information comes from, but it involves all of Ward's Brook as it runs in front of 3 properties, including the PID that we're talking about. And 5 years ago, Ward's Brook used to run in front of this PID. However, Mr. McCauley, with an excavator, with no permit, no permission, trespassed on a neighbor's land and redirected Ward's Brook out to the Bay of Fundy, so that the claim is that Ward's Brook no longer runs in front of this property, which, in terms of the Environment Act in Nova Scotia, is false, because the Environment Act specifies that a watercourse is still a watercourse for up to 40 years after it is dry. So now there is a wetland there, it's an environmentally sensitive area, and it remains a watercourse. So with respect to this development application, having a buffer zone from the Bay of Fundy is meaningless. The buffer zone needs to be from the bank of the brook, and it continues to be a provincial watercourse, and it will be so until 35 years from now if it remains dry, which I trust will not occur. The brook will be returned to its original course.
Just to be clear, it is dry at the moment, though.
It's a wetland, and occasionally there is water running through it, but the brook itself does not actually run through that place now, although it did for certain 5 years ago.
Good, thank you.
And the fact that it no longer runs there was not a natural occurrence. With respect to the Ministry of the Environment, I submit to you that the staff and council knew that there was a proceeding in the Ministry of Environment prior to November 20th. Now, I would like a question to know, through you, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
did staff or council initiate any Freedom of Information requests from the Ministry of the Environment?
I'll hold you there. Mr. Boone,
So Your Worship, will answer the first question.
go ahead.
The answer is no, we did not submit a FOIA application. We asked the Department of Environment to keep us abreast of the information. Our hope was that if more information was shared with the local community, that would come forward. But also, I do want to mention that if a watercourse, even if it was altered illegally, which is the conversation, if a watercourse is identified as a watercourse, we also have setbacks from watercourses that are required under the land use bylaw. So if that area is identified as a wetland or identified as a watercourse, there's an additional buffer. So our buffer, shoreline and watercourse buffers, they're both. So just to give Mr. Bowser some assurances that if there is another watercourse that's involved when we come to look at future development agreement development permit applications, we will apply the buffer not just to the shoreline, but also to any watercourses that are identified. Our plan, very clearly, as stated in the presentation, is to have the Department of Environment visit the site in respect to on-site sewage disposal, but our plan would be to have them to look at all of the elements, because at some point, we're going to require a location certificate, especially where there's been good, solid concerns raised by the community. We'll be looking for information that shows specifically the setbacks from not just the shoreline of the Bay of Fundy, but any watercourse that would be in the area. So I will state that publicly, that we'll ensure that's done, but we have not submitted an application for FOIA, as I said earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. Mr. Bowser, I will caution you that this is an opportunity for you to express your opinion. I, as the chair, am allowed to ask points of clarification, which is why I asked you the question about is the brook dry now or not. So this is not a question and answer session. Any questions that you have coming out of this will be followed up after this meeting today, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
And questions directed to myself, I would be happy to answer from you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to say that my submissions to the Planning Department occurred November 12th, well in advance of the planned council meeting, public hearing on November 20th.
I will caution
And
you, you have 34 seconds left, so.
I would close by saying there are two issues here, Buffalo under the brook, and it is entirely premature to grant this zoning application until the proceedings from the Ministry of the Environment are complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes, from the public that wishes to speak towards this? Okay, when Mr. Bowser removes himself, we'll allow you to come forward.
Good afternoon, Your Worship
Thank you.
and Council.
I would like to state your name, please.
My name is Martin Taylor. I live at 8039 Highway 209.
Okay, sir, you know the rules. You have 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I would like to concur with everything that Mr. Bowser has just said. I've seen it since I moved towards Brook in 2016. I used to drive my truck down the road on the Winters property, allowing public access. I have been down there with my truck to drive down to Brookville Rock at least half a dozen times, as I still do in Fraserville and Advocate, where there have been no issues. I have noticed on the Wards Brook Beach some issues. A fire obviously had been lit very near Mr. Bowser's trees on the beach, dangerous. A picnic table, which might have previously belonged to the library, plus a temporary sort of sunshade or rain roof, which of course was temporary, but I can see some concern that the beach was being abused by the public, and not to mention the discarded used prophylactics. Mr. Winters suffered the four-wheeler hobby when the water might have been a little high to drive through, and they had accessed his property and driven all over it. So I can well understand that Mr. Winters might be tired of people in vehicles on the beach, and thus rocks were put up to block it. I can still walk, though with difficulty now. But the rocks where they have been last placed are very difficult to get over for someone who is partially disabled. I miss the beach tremendously. I have nieces and nephews, my daughters, people come with their families, and being the beach that it was great. We could take little kids down there and so forth, but now we have to walk a distance. So it has been used by the public, and the redirection of Wards Brook was a shock. I'm sure that Mr. McCully has broken some rules and regulations, as Mr. Bowser has pointed out. But my concern would be his knowledge of property erosion, not from the sea, but from his cleared land on the residential property that wiped out a road completely within 2 years that he had built down the bank. Possibly the original plan was to put a campground there. Then, I'm very much in favor of what Mr. McCully is proposing. It serves the community. It brings in business and local well-known traditional stops of campgrounds in the area are getting pretty full. They haven't started in Wards Brook yet or Port Reville in terms of people visiting and staying there very much. But what I am hoping is that, and I'm, okay, the Wards Brook exit to the sea, the wetlands referred to. Someone must know that it's going to go back the way it was, and we can see evidence of that. That's going to happen. The only reason it's a wetland and a little dry is that because of the redirection, the sea has closed it off at the other end. You're welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? Move on. Is there any additional comments? Is the applicant here today, Glenn?
Sorry, Your Worship, I didn't see Mr. McCauley here. We had re-advised him about the hearing, but I didn't see him unless he identifies himself. I have met him, and I did not recognize him here.
Did he send along any additional comments?
Nothing that I was aware of, and nothing that Kira had received. She reached out on a couple of occasions. We did an additional site visit down to and met with Mr. McCauley on site back in the fall, before the snow came, of course. So I can't give you any additional comments. We've been very clear about the needs for this to move forward, as I mentioned in the presentation. And we did include in the package a number of the photos that were provided, even though it was the adjacent PID. We did provide that in the package, some of the information that was shared by Mr. Bowser in respect to the environmental concerns at Wards Brook. The only thing, Your Worship, if I could indulge you for one more second, is if Mr. Bowser had some notes here, if they were different than what he's provided us in the past, I'd certainly appreciate him providing those to us.
You have everything
It's the
that
same
I've
stuff.
provided.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Unlike some of the municipal websites, the information that I provide is current.
Any additional questions from any of the members of council to Mr. Boone? Seeing none, I will now declare the public hearing closed. Thank you very much. Item 2.5.2, public hearing, bylaw to amend the LUB 24-16 to rezone PID 253949581370 Southampton Road, West Amherst. And I will now advise that the public hearing is being held in accordance to the provisions of the Municipal Government Act, and that the purpose of the public hearing is to provide the public with the opportunity to express their views on certain proposals prior to council making a final decision. Mr. Boone, you will now present. Oh, call it to order. Did I call it to order? I thought I did. Yeah, I'll call the public meeting to order. There we go. We're good to go now. Go ahead, Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just shifting gears here quickly.
Yep, sure, go ahead. Take your
Thank
time.
you. All right, thank you, Your Worship. As mentioned at the outset, this public hearing was advertised in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, and I'm just going to use the first slide here to just give an overview of the project and what the applicant has applied for. This location, it's a vacant property currently, and what they're looking to do is create a transport truck company office and storage. You know, it's not part of the initial application or their initial plan, but potentially, and to be upfront, small maintenance area, potential future land use on this as well. The property is currently country residential. It's vacant. Photo to the left there shows a shot from the street. I have a few more photos coming here. You can see the subject properties outlined on the air photo and gives you a location in respect to the Boomer Loop and the Southampton Road itself as well. A unique intersection, no question, which is why we had asked the applicant to converse with Nova Scotia Public Works or Department of Transportation in the past to ensure that access to this could in fact be approved. We have suggested in this case Your worship, a buffer from residential zones that would be different than the setbacks that are required in the land use bylaw for buildings. So just a little bit more context in respect to some more photos that Kira and I have been to the site a couple times. In fact, I went out to the site yesterday, figured it might be a little different to see it with snow conditions around and road conditions as well. So this property is immediately across the street from where Melance's Trucking formerly operated. I know that the applicant currently utilizes some of that site for some of their equipment and parking now. They'll speak to that because the applicants are here and will probably speak at the end of the public engagement portion, Your Worship. So once again, some areas definitely residential. Upper left-hand corner, that is the most adjacent or most proximate home, I guess, a house in the most and closest proximity. The owner of that property is here today and will speak as well. And so just so we're trying to give you some context on this area. The one thing I did not note in the report, but I thought was important to note, this area is just in a location where the speed zone does change. So if you're leading from Amherst, you're coming out at a 60. If you're coming in from Southampton end or Upper Nepean end, it's where the, just prior to the site is where the speed zone drops to 60. So this again, as we use the comparison maps, we like to show to the left the existing zoning that's in place. Across the street, this is a little unique because that land, that Mr. Melance's property across the street is actually zoned industrial. As we've been through some of our zoning maps before, it would probably more appropriately have been zoned rural industrial at the time, but that is the existing zoning. It is industrial across the street. There are some C-mix areas that are zoned there, and at the time that was done, was proximity to the highway gives people more opportunities to do more things with their property. All of those red, although they're C-mix, commercial mix zones, they're all residential properties. And then you can see, again, this is just a little bit more information on what would actually change to the rural industrial or IR, the rural industrial zone, would just be this particular property, but the entire PID. So this is a bit of an eye chart, but just to highlight a couple things quickly. A few things we're doing with this rezoning application. We're also doing some text amendments. For clarity, we're adding office to the rural industrial zone. It could be considered as an accessory use, which all zones permit accessory uses under our land use bylaw. We just thought that was important for clarity to add office as a permitted use. And then we were looking at making a text amendment. Your Worship, 11.3.8 was the area that the intent for this section was to create a buffer from any common property line with residential uses. So there was some confusion in the report with respect to that, whether that was a setback for buildings. I want to clarify that that was meant to say industrial uses shall maintain a 10-meter buffer, and the bylaw would reflect that should it move forward to second reading and consideration by council. At this point, Your Worship, that intent, as I want to reinforce, is to create a buffer. The difference between a buffer and a setback is the setback is where the building can be placed, where the buffer is an area that we don't permit any use or activity to occur within that space. So it's almost like a green buffer, if I could be so bold, Your Worship. Financial considerations to the municipality, none specific to the proposal. You know, and sometimes we do mention that commercial development could increase and create new tax assessment. It's fair to say we do note that in many of our reports. Environmental implications, the site could qualify for an on-site sewage disposal system. We're outside the central services that exist on the other side of the Trans-Canada for West Amherst. If it was determined at a building permit stage that any of the development requires a washroom through the building code, then they will have to go through the process of getting an on-site sewage disposal system or an OSS approved. We do have a note in here that we don't feel there's any sensitive ecological environmental issues on the property itself. There's certainly wetlands to the rear that aren't on this property, and as with any on-site developments, stormwater has to be directed to the highway stormwater system, which in this case is open ditches. It cannot be directed onto private property. So any stormwater has to follow the process, be dealt with on the site and directed to the stormwater ditches that are part of the highway right away. Community engagement, once again, similar to before, in accordance with Section 206 of the MGA, public notices were placed on the website. 2 weeks prior, we also did a notice in the Chronicle Herald. It was a double ad. It was this public hearing and the one we just had. And we also placed a planning notice on the property. We did that about a week, 8 days or so in advance of the public hearing. This obviously, all of this public engagement or request for public engagement stimulated public input. We have received 10 letters as of the time of this report, and most, of course, were objecting to the proposed amendment. Your Worship, I do have received from the applicant today. This was just recent information. Can certainly provide it to council members if you wish. They do have their final approval from the Department of Public Works in respect to the driveway. The one thing I understand is the driveway size and location was restricted in regards to that review. And also, Mr. Melanson currently provides them access and ability to operate from his property. He's provided a letter here that I can provide to council noting that he has provided them access on the site, his site, since September 2023. The current applicant and business, but prior to that, a related company and a related operator has parked on his property for more than 4 years. Do recognize, Your Worship, that in this presentation it wasn't noted, but you know, some of the character of the neighborhood has changed because the scale of the operation on the industrial lands has changed, but it is still zoned industrial and it still has those operating land uses. So as with all public hearings, there's no motion to consider, and happy to answer or clarify any questions, and I could do the same to any members of the public.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Boone. Any written submissions received other than the one mentioned from Mr. Melanson?
We have 10 letters, Your Worship. The package, most of the information was received over the days leading up and after the report was completed. We have put those together in a consolidated package that was provided to council. And as I mentioned in the previous public hearing, any letters from the public or concerns that are raised will become part of the second reading package. I can give you quick highlights of what we've been able to ascertain by reading those letters in advance of today, but we'll tell you, members of council and the public as well, is that we'll review those and give a better and more detailed analysis in the second reading report.
Go ahead.
Yep. So, Your Worship, obviously, you know, impact on neighborhood character was a common theme with the concerns and the objections that were raised. And just looking at land use and an appropriate land use in the area. Increased traffic from any development, which is again why we've asked the applicant to go through the process of approval to the Department of Transportation and Public Works. And there were concerns with regards to watercourse protection and runoffs from any commercial or industrial development. At the end of the presentation, Your Worship, I know there's some members from the public have talked about that. I have some additional photos that I can use for the screen should they wish to be able to explain that, and has some visuals for both the members of the public as well as council. So I have added those at the end of the presentation. They're not part of my presentation, but I have them here for information should we need them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On a couple of points of clarification, would it be fair to give us the updated information regarding the driveway, or would that be appropriate? I guess would be the answer. Sure. Yep. So the council hears that and sees it now. They'll see it again later.
And I will provide this, so I have copies here that we can share. So both the letter from Public Works as well as Mr. Melanson is in this package. Essentially, the Department of Transportation has approved frontage and an entrance off this property. Give you them all. I have an extra copy, right? Yeah, I just need one because I think I have one here, but sorry. Yep. It was short. I have an extra, I think. Sorry, Your Worship. So stopping site distances is a normal process in which the department reviews. Obviously, for commercial driveways, it's a little more rigorous and more detailed than you would do for a residential driveway. The applicants can speak to this because I know they're here, but I know that, as mentioned before, the driveway was restricted in location and in width. And they will require a permit to install the culvert and do any work on this entrance should they proceed in the future. Mr. Melanson just reinforced what I'd said briefly, is that, the property's directly across from his property where he operated for a number of years. And since the operators have been utilizing his land, he hasn't had any direct complaints as the property owner. And I would, surmise, Your Worship, that it was used for similar operation for many years, and but I would let the public express their own opinions on that.
Thank you very much. My next clarifying question was going to be the point of Mr. Melanson's letter, so thank you for doing that ahead of me. So we've acknowledged all the written submissions at this point. There were no last-minute submissions late today, other than, nope?
Nope,
Okay, good.
I gotta check with the boss there.
Yeah, that's
so-
fine. Check with the
And I
boss.
wouldn't perceive, to say that, any information that's received after the meeting will still consider as part of the second reading report. So always open to the information, the dialogue. I've had several conversations with folks on this file. It's part of the process, and it's a very good part of the process.
And that's why they call it a public hearing.
Correct.
Anybody from the public that wishes to speak can now come forward. And I will remind you of the rules. State your name and preferably your address, and you have 5 minutes from the time you start. And Mr. Harrod will advise me when you have 30 seconds left.
My name is Brian Dwaron. I live at 1384 Southampton Road, adjacent to the proposed 1370 to be rezoned from, I guess it's from country to rural industrial. So just want to say good afternoon to Your Worship and Deputy Mayor Gould and the councilors, Mr. Boone. So I guess we've done a lot. I've had the flu for 2 weeks, but we tried to get a lot done since we knew this was happening. But anyway, before I outline my concerns, I want to emphasize the strong community opposition to this proposal. We put a petition together, and we got 273 signatures, and we broke it down into 3 sections of kind of immediate locals, then from, so the immediate locals, we went from the Trans-Canada to the Boomer Loop, including the Boomer Loop where the Boomer Loop meets Southampton Road. And in that area, there were 59 households potential. 50 of them, we got support of not wanting to have something like that in the immediate area because of environmental issues, dangers on that corner. That corner is just notoriously known to be dangerous. And that was a greater area that we had. So in the more immediate retract that actually. So it was 18 out of 20 that we received in that area that I just first spoke. So 18 out of the 20 immediate residents was in support. Then when we went from the Amherst Point turn to the Trans-Canada, in that area, there were 59 potential households, of which 50 gave us support. And most of them, without us even saying when we walk in and talk, is, I can't believe that we would have that kind of activity on a dangerous corner. Tractor trailers pulling in and out of that property was the primary thing for anybody that just used the road and didn't, weren't immediately impacted by it. So of the others from the 273 that weren't impacted directly in the immediate, they were concerned with tractor trailer activity. And there was 9 households that we could not get to speak with. They were either the house was vacant, the occupants were unavailable, or they were out of town. So we kind of covered that pretty good. So these numbers clearly demonstrate the widespread concern amongst those most directly impacted by the rezoning. With this foundation, I'd like to highlight the specific reasons for the opposition. The key concern, number one, traffic and safety. This 1370 is right on the turn, and it's a turn that I've lived there, I've been around, I worked for Vaughan over the years. It's countless how many vehicles we've towed out of the snowbanks over the years. And it's right on this exact turn where people lose control that tractor trailers would be entering and exiting on the opposite side of the road where on Vaughn's side, you can see for a mile each way. You can't see very clearly from that property. And at my place at 1384, it almost occurs weekly. I pull out of the driveway, look at the turn, and by the time I'm out, there's people on me, have to jam their brakes on for safety reasons, or they go around me on the yellow line, and I'm an astute driver. I have a Class 1s, I have a tractor trailer's license, so this world is very, it's not foreign to me in any way. And that would create hazardous conditions for residents, pedestrians, other drivers. Environmental concerns. Right now, that property there's no risks at all with that property as it sits now. A nice green, lush wildlife area. There's a herd of deer that are there constantly, anywhere from 10 to 14 between my property and this property. And
This is your 30-second warning.
oh my goodness, seriously?
That's it?
Oh, okay.
Happens quick.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. So, yeah, so noise and disruption, impact on property value. So let me just get this one thing out. In my research around the applicants using the Melansons, I've talked to Vaughn and Gale many times about not wanting tractors over there, not wanting trailers blocking. And that's on that side of the road. We don't want a gravel, dirt parking lot that's 2 acres on the same side. We want to move towards more residential and less industrialization. And there's lots of, this alternative with Vaughan is a very good alternative that would to continue. And it's it's free.
Thank you very
There's no
much.
charge, right?
Sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
the rules are the
Yeah,
rules.
there should be a clock, right?
I don't know. There is one running, you just don't get to see it, so I try and give you a little warning.
Anyway,
Thank
I
you
just
very
say one last thing is all my details are in the letter, so please have a really close look at my letter. I don't do this much anymore, so the letter will let you know the details.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your patience.
Mr. Boone, you look like you have something to say.
Yeah, just your worship, if the presentation notes were a little different than the letter, then if you could share them with
Yes,
us,
I
that
was
would
gonna
be,
ask that.
yeah,
Yep.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So, you got the point, Mr. Dorman, that if anything is in your presentation there that from today that wasn't already submitted, please make sure that it gets to Mr. Boone.
I will. And did you say earlier that we can submit anything, any information after that's part of the process?
Go ahead, Mr. Boone.
So, your worship, we try to get as much information we can in advance with the public hearing, put it in the package. But any information that comes in afterwards, we still make it part of the second reading package. If it's coming in just the week before we're putting the details to council, sometimes harder for us to analyze it in greater detail. So if there's additional information that folks think they need to provide it as quick as we can. So, but we normally try to get as much as we can at this stage.
We would need it by Friday morning at the latest of the day of the council.
Yes.
Or the week.
The
of the
week,
council.
Friday prior to the next council meeting is the deadline, just to be clear to everyone. Okay, is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak today? Come forward, state your name and address, and I'll get Mr. Harrod to start the timer.
Hello, I'm Marlon Chase, and I live at 92 Boomer Loop. Good evening. My name is Marlon Chase, and I've lived at 92 Boomer Loop for most of the 35 years of my life. The serene environment we currently enjoy is currently at risk of the possibility of this rezoning. I'm a mother of 2 and a horse owner of 3. Saying no to this rezoning is essential not only for the health and comfort for my horses, but also for the residents who have chosen this location for its quiet and rural charm. The noise and commotion associated with increased truck activity will disrupt the harmony of our neighborhood and diminish the quality of life for everyone living here. I wanted to speak today on behalf of many of my neighbors who have expressed their concern regarding the safety of our community as I was canvassing the area, particularly in relation to the potential presence of transportation trucks in our area frequented by young pedestrians, seniors walking, and school buses. I've spoken with 2 different bus drivers, and they have highlighted the significant risk of having tractor trailers moving in and out of that sharp corner. Through my visits to the home to gain signatures in opposition, I never had one person refuse a signature. They all thanked me for my efforts in trying to keep our community a safe and quiet place. This, in my opinion, is very telling. The applicant, who does not live in our area currently, does not understand the significance of the dangers of that corner. The people that I spoke with, they all highlighted that they've probably had a near miss at one time or another around that corner. Children, due to their size and lack of awareness of traffic dangers, are at a higher risk in such environments. The large blind spots of transportation trucks and the difficulty in maneuvering these large vehicles through our narrow streets only increases the risk. The proposed driveway is very small and located on a blind corner. After speaking with multiple Class 1 drivers, they have highlighted the likelihood that the small driveway will be either missed and they will use Boomer Loop, where I currently live, as a turnaround spot. Definitely not something that we want to happen. You might have seen in the picture of the overhead view, coming out and going around Boomer Loop and back to the main highway is our concern. I urge your council to really consider the potential road dangers and think of our children's safety. Our community has been a very quiet, family-oriented community for decades, and one we all enjoy. The potential to have this uprooted is very concerning. Once this is potentially rezoned, the possibilities are really endless for this property and what they may choose to do with it in the future. This is what we need to think about. It's not the right now, but what could happen in the future when this is already done. Mr. Melanson's property was basically grandfathered into this zoning regulations because it's been there for decades. Thank you for giving us a voice on this matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Boone?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Probably the only key thing, just to, I know there's others that wish to speak, that I would just note is the comment with regards to future uses. It's valid in the fact that once you approve a zone, all of the permitted uses that are on that zoning list would be eligible for development in the future. So just for clarity, Your Worship, I just want to make sure that it's an accurate statement, so.
Thank you. That's the third time in 10 minutes you've answered a question I was getting ready to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Once, twice, thrice. Okay. Any additional comments from the applicants? You sure can. Although there are no rules around how long you may speak that I'm aware of, I would ask you to, for the sake of fairness, to limit it perhaps to 5 minutes if you
100%.
could. Okay.
Good
And
evening,
your
folks.
Your name and address
My name's
first.
Scott Allen. I'm actually a new resident of Boomer Loop, 122.
Okay. Go ahead.
We've received approval from Department of Transportation for this driveway. They deem it safe. We don't want to put our business or our equipment at risk. In fact, we've operated directly across the road for several years now, as mentioned before, pulling out of that driveway, and we've had no issues or cars, I'm sure there's people that are speeding we don't pull out in front of people intentionally. We can see right up the road from where our driveway is. That's why there was limitations to where our driveway could be put, because we wanted to actually culvert the whole ditch, but they said, no, you can't do that, because if you have a truck come out here, you can't see up the road, but if you have it come out down here, you can see up the road. So, our drivers are aware of dangerous turns and traffic and all this stuff. We deal with it on a daily basis. So, I don't see it as a major concern on my end. That's why we wanted to put the business there. We operated across the road for 4 years, no noise complaints, no traffic complaints, and in fact, it's mainly my father and I and some trailers that are going to be utilizing the property. Most of our drivers take their truck and trailer home with them throughout the province. So the only time they will be there is if they need to switch out a trailer once in a while. Most of the time they stay pinned to the trailer they're assigned to and they take it home with them. We're not going to put a terminal there where there's going to be like offloading and loading. I know that future uses, I understand all that, but that's not our intention here. We're just intending to move our business from one side of the road to the other. That's it.
Thank you very much. Before you go,
Yeah.
just on another clarification point. You referred to the driveway, you had asked for it, I just want to be clear here. You would ask for it in a certain spot and DOT had approved it in a different spot, or was that relative to the width of the driveway? I just want to be clear for council.
We requested the whole front of the property be culverted and turned into potential entrance, but they said, no, you shouldn't do that, because if one truck decides to come in here and another truck decides to go there, it could create a hazard, which is understandable.
Yep.
So We appease them.
Okay, good, thank you very much, just want to clarify that.
Not a
that's all.
problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Is, any additional questions from council to our staff member? Seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll give them a minute to get it.
Oh, yeah. Not gonna stay, Don?
Come on, Don, stay
Not
for a
gonna
bit. Okay. It seems quiet in here all of a sudden. Item 2.5.3 is a presentation from the Cumberland Trails Association. And the presentation will be given on the progress towards the destination trail for Cumberland County. Mr. Greg Nix is in the house and taking his seat. We'll caution you, Mr. Nix, that you are on a timer too. But you get more than 5 minutes. You're on the lucky timer, you get 15. With questions. So you have to, I would say 11 and a half and allow for questions, so. Well, yeah, no, I know that. He probably walked here. I'm guessing he's gonna walk home. So, anyway, go ahead, sir. And welcome. Very nice to see you here today. Thank you. Waiting for the red. There you go. You're good now.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor and council and staff and guests, my name is Gregory Nix, and I'm president of the Cumberland Trails Association and other organizations that are trail related around the county of Cumberland. And I sort of want to get directly into why I'm here, so we can go to the next slide. Thank you for Amanda for doing the slide thing for us.
You're very welcome. It's actually Peter over here, just so.
Oh, Peter.
Just so you know who to point to.
So we get right to the purpose, and so our purpose is to apply for annual funding for the destination trail. Currently, and I really put a lot of kudos out to previous years and supports from previous councils in terms of the incredible support trails have received. We definitely are a trails supportive county without any question. When I look at the rationale for it, increasing tourism, supporting sustainability, that's probably the biggest one here. Supporting a sustainable trail, knowing that we have annual funding helps us with grants in a big way. A lot of grants are determinant early on. They'll ask, what is your municipal's contribution this year? And I generally have to wait till sometime later and say, I hope they're going to put in this much. And it puts a lot of stress on the whole grant system when I'm looking for large projects on a rail trail system. So looking at supporting all-season food, lodging, and fuel services, supporting inclusive sections of the Trans-Canada Trail for motorized and non-motorized. So we're making sure that all users get to enjoy this trail system. That does require significant maintenance. And of course, the health benefits that come with being on trails. Okay. The focus for annual funding, I put it right up front for you. In year 1, year 2, 20,000. And you actually almost do that already. I just have to do a lot of work to get a lot of grants going in. But you actually do support one of my groups and other groups that are helping me with about that amount. But this would just make it so much easier. And reducing that to 15,000. The reason for the reduction is I'm expecting that in year 3 and 4, I'll be getting closer to the main goal, which is creating that sustainable trail surface. Last summer, we had 35 people plus myself every day for 35 days fixing the trail by hand out of the back of a truck or the back of a dumpster, and that's just not sustainable. I'm retired, but the body, as you can tell, isn't quite working like it used to. But, you know, we do want to use a grader on that trail like other counties that have destination trails and rail trails. And right now, if we used a grader, it would bring up all kinds of nasty ballast stone and ruin the trail for horses and bicycles and all the other intended users on the trail. So we want enough fine granite on that surface over a 4-year program. And I'm hoping to front load it a little bit, maybe use a little rail trail money because Peter's aware we get some rail trail funding and try to boost that up. And with our, knowing we have that guaranteed amount, we can generally leverage up to about 110,000 from the other trail partners, like off-highway vehicle infrastructure funding and community culture heritage and so on. So looking at trying to leverage the big picture, you're looking at a $500,000 4-year project. By the end of the 4 years, we're hoping that going forward, a grading every year and a little pothole filling when necessary, you know, that sort of thing. So that's, of all the things we do, and I wouldn't even try to get it all said in this meeting, that's the focus for that funding, that's getting that rail trail sustainable over a long period of time. So that is, go ahead, that's the focus. So we have a lot of characteristics for a destination trail. I wanted to make everybody aware of what a destination trail is. I won't go through them all there, but you can read them on your own. But essentially, it's here to Pictou. It has to be at least about 100 kilometers. We have 3 destination trails in Nova Scotia, the Rum Runners in Halifax, the Harvest Moon down in the valley, and the Celtic Coastal Trail along the Inverness shores up in Cape Breton. So we'd like to have a destination trail here in northern Nova Scotia, Pictou to Oxford, and hopefully someday, as I've mentioned before to council, to Amherst, right? I'd love to see that destination trail come into this, our largest town. And we are doing little things to sort of get there, along with the Cumberland Snowmobile Club and Andy Wallace. So it's not like it's being ignored. We're working towards that. Okay. And the vision supports, obviously, this grant in terms of enhancing wellness and a variety of trail users. It's really exciting to see the number of bicycle groups coming from New Brunswick already and from PEI already. We haven't really advertised this trail much yet, but word of mouth already is showing that we have a product worth supporting. Go ahead. I'm not going to read everything, so now that I know I have a 15-minute. So you could, yeah. So, so I just wanted you to be aware that of all the assets we have, which we'll talk about in a second, the biggest asset we have in Cumberland County is that we have a huge trail system. It is about the most exciting trail system around Nova Scotia or the Maritimes. Even New Brunswick has a hard time competing with the number of loops and possibilities. So that's something that we have along with the rail trail. You can see the green area in the top is our section. The Colchester section's in sort of an orange, and yellow is the Pictou County section. And I've been working with those 3 groups, and I'm on the board with one of them, to all work together to make sure we get this done as 3 counties. Go ahead. So there's the finery of it. So we just blew up our section. The red dots are trailheads. We have 4 of them. We have some orange in there, which are rest stops. We have 2 shelters with stoves. So we have a fairly significant system. The coolest thing about us is being able to connect to the coastal communities of Pugwash and Wallace for services, because you can't be a destination trail unless you can access services. So including Amherst someday is going to be critical for us over time. Go ahead. Okay, so you can see our partners. I'm not going to dwell on it. We have tremendous partners, a lot of surprise partners, but people, including the councillors here, have been just so generous to us. Every time we get in a bit of a pinch, it seems like somebody rushes to our aid. And I'll tell you, as somebody that is on the end of trying to make things happen or working on emergencies, that just fills your heart really quick when you know that you've got some backup. So much appreciate it. Next. So we have other partners that we work on things with, and you might say, well, Greg, why are you helping other people when, you know, you're trying to get this destination? Well, it's all part of the big picture. Without that connection to Nellie's Grill, the ATVs and snowmobiles can't get there and support restaurants and accommodation, so on. So go ahead. And the Oxford Trails Association, there's a loop we're working on around there with them. And the Sunrise Trails ATV. I couldn't find the finalized picture of that, but that's what it looked like when we started last fall, and I was one of the power saw operators that we put a new trail into Crossroads Cycle and, of course, the motel and restaurant. Go ahead. We've got a lot of assets on the system, a lot of culverts. Assets also mean maintenance. So you sort of have a feel just at those first couple that just that 440-foot Wallace Bridge, that was over $250,000 to get that past all the engineering and all the safety standards. So yes, it's great to have a cool trail, but the old rail lines did have a lot of things that required fixing up. Go ahead. So what have we been up to since, well, I just started at 2020. We initially got some money from Bragg Foundation, which allowed us to do 20 kilometers of the basic repairs on the trail and get at least a little bit of gravel on the trail, but not enough to grade, but it was a good start. And you can see the other things we've done in that first year. Next. And so in 2021, we did another 20 kilometers of the main line. We started working on the connection to Pugwash, and we had two major bridges there that were condemned, and so we replaced both bridges, and that's the kind of work we had to do. So requiring a lot of machinery, a lot of contractor work. Volunteers did everything we could, like we widened the trail by walking it during COVID with 3 people at a time, but with pole saws and things, but we can only do so much with volunteers. Next. Major projects in 22 was, I think the proudest thing that year was the big bridge. So we really put the focus on the big bridge in Wallace Spring Bridge. We had to raise the center section, replace the concrete tops of those piers, fix around the bottom of the piers, do mortaring on the piers, and you can see on the left, there's a trestle section where we had to put new cement pads. Huge project. So that was, besides all the other things, that was sort of the thing we were proud of most. Go ahead. Major projects for 23, whenever we do one of these giant arch culverts that all can't, we try to save them when we can. We did one last year, but boys, when you can't save it and you have to replace it, you get an idea of what we have to do to the trail in order to get down there, the 30 or 40 or 50 feet, and replace one of these culverts. So major, major infrastructure work. Go ahead. 2023, two big things. We did the epoxy treatment to the bridge in Oxford, which is a cool asset. As you see, it's the only place you see the trail in Cumberland County from the Trans-Canada Highway, which is kind of weird, but it's the only spot you actually get to see our trail from the highway. And of course, completing the Quarry Branch Trail down to Wallace was a big one. And we actually had an emergency on a big bridge going into Pugwash, now called the Leahy Bridge, and we had the abutment actually fell over, so we actually had to re-concrete the abutments. So those were all major projects. Next. So this past year, 2024, big project was restoring one of the arch culverts. I took a picture from the pretty side. The other side is all fallen in, and we had to literally re-cement the entire thing with rebar and reinforcing and pour a cement floor in the bottom to keep the bottom, too much detail. But anyway, we had to do a lot of stuff, but it was worth preserving. We're gonna have it's a nice trail feature. We'll have a sign there. We'll have a little trail with a picnic table. Be another nice rest stop added to the rail trail. Go. Getting an accessible washroom on the trail. Thank you, counselors. And of course, that's what our trailheads kind of typically look like. We have a little kiosk at every one of them, all 4, and we have historical information in them. But the accessible washroom was our first attempt, and so far it's been very well respected. I always worry about vandalism, but it's something, I'm the kind of guy, I'm going to keep doing it and fixing it until hopefully they stop someday, or I die first, whichever happens. And you can see one of our poor volunteers there, he did 17 days of his summer vacation with me on the trail, and still smiling, so go. And let's go again, that's just our jewel of our system as far as I'm concerned, this crazy bridge. And we've even had some artwork done from Louise Cloutier showing what it looked like in this open position. As far as the focus for the next 4 years, certainly we've highlighted this short line tread enhancement. So making it so we don't have to worry so much about handwork and making sure we have a guaranteed trail surface for all users in the future. There has to be a new bridge put in at Thompson Road, but that'll likely get done next summer. And of course, we're going to have actually an audit for destination trail status, and that's going on. Terminus has been chosen, and the 3 counties are sharing the cost. Well, the three county groups, that's better, well said. And if you want to know more about destination trails and what kind of support is available from Tourism Nova Scotia, you can just Google Destination Trails Nova Scotia, and you'll see where we want to be. We want to be the 4th one. Next. So we do a lot of events, and no sense going through them all. It's much more besides that, but we do a lot of guided kinds of things, and include the Parisboro Trails. We manage 4 of them, and we do a lot of guided hikes in the Fundy, the Parisboro area, and those waterfall type things are very popular. And it's just signing an MOU with the Geopark right now. Go ahead. And there's a hike coming up too if you like hot dogs. So that's our final slide. it's nice to see the horses out there. They couldn't go on the trail before because of the ballast stone. And so we have 4 horse groups, and just in Colchester and Cumberland, that use it often. They also do carriage rides, which is kind of fun. But it's the bicycle groups that I'm amazed with, that's taken off. And of course, side-by-sides are an economic driver and growing like crazy. So they're looking for accommodations, they're looking for food, they're looking for day trips, ideas to stay. So one of the handouts I left you is the budgets that, so you can sort of get an idea of the kind of money we've spent each year for the last few years. March is our next one. So if you do want March's statement, we can get that to you a little later. But it gives you an idea that we go through over 200,000 a year, and that's just through us specifically, not through the other groups I belong to, which is, at this point, I've probably brought, our groups have brought somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million in the last 4 groups to Cumberland County, which never came here before. So I think that's what's really cool. Our contractors, our workers are getting money helping us fix this trail up. We also gave you a little blurb there on a little piece that we're working with Tourism Nova Scotia, the new people there, and the other counties to update information about us, because we weren't previously on the short line, only Pictou. So now we're going to have a presence, at least beginning presence, on Tourism Nova Scotia website. So you can read what the précis is there. And there is an example of Inverness's ask from the Celtic Shores, which don't pay attention to their numbers because they ask for like a lot of money. But they gives you a sense of that we're not the only municipality supporting trails in Nova Scotia. And I think there was one other document that was just what was the other document? There was one that was accounting. There was one that, just a note. So it just gives you a little more information about some of the things going on. So in summary, really quickly, that's, we're busy. And thank heavens I'm retired is all I can say. And we're really excited about all the work that everybody does together in Cumberland County to support our trails. So thank you very much. Been a pleasure. And thanks for your continued support.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Yeah. Any
I'll
questions?
ask for questions from council, and if there's any from them, we'll do them first, and then I'll have a closing comment. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Gould, followed by Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg, for the presentation. I know I represent District 1, and it completely surrounds Amherst, so right off the bat, you mentioned that possibility of looking at. I get that question quite often because people have to either load their vehicles to get to a safe spot, or they have to do something illegal or unsafe to get to the areas that they want to get to, the trails. So I've been on a number of the trails, and certainly from when we used to go years ago to when we're going now, it's pretty nice drive. You can actually look around and enjoy the trip. So I know we have a number of ATV groups and snowmobile groups that all help and work out, and we try to support them all. But certainly if you're talking to anyone in Cumberland County, and you mentioned Greg Nix, they all soon light up and they appreciate the work that you're doing. So on behalf of them, like to thank you for the work that you're doing, and I'm assuming that we'll get a grant application for this in the coming months as we start to look at that stuff coming in. So appreciate all that you do, and thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Redmond.
That's why he's deputy. He's deputy, he steals everybody's thunder. I can't say enough about Greg. He's one of the people that I admire. His determination and his grit and gathering, like Mr. McDonald, right?
I should interrupt and introduce Larry McDonald. He's our signage guy. So when you see signage on the trail, that's him, and he also supports, of course, a lot of volunteer time in our groups.
But without people like you, these things would not get done. It always takes somebody, a leader, and thank you.
Thank you. Very kind.
Anyone else from council have any comments? I will say that there's a lot of ongoing projects, a lot of discussion going on currently, coming before council over the coming months in regards to some talk about extending the trail, the western end of the Ship Railway to gain access into the town of Amherst. And we have already had some preliminary discussions with Mayor Small in the town of Amherst, or at least I have. about trying to figure out a way to get the walking trails surround Amherst. There's ongoing discussion about access and getting snowmobile and ATV traffic into the towns and villages in our county, and all of that. So all of those things are works in progress and are very much on our radar over the next few months. Once we get into the budgets, and once we go by budget, we'll turn our focus to a number of those things very quickly. But the other thing I would remind you that for this year, you still must apply under the grants program, and then it'll be a decision of the budget process and council from that point forward. And last but not least, I would like to say that a personal thank you to you. It doesn't matter what end of this province, where you go, if you mention your name, everybody seems to know you. I suspect you're probably more popular than the premier, from what I can tell. Everybody knows you everywhere. And I can honestly say that the respect that you have garnered from everybody from one end of this province to the other, and the work that you've done in this trail system, it really is a model and a person to be modeled after, quite frankly, Greg. You do a great job.
Well,
Thank you
bless
so much.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Go. Okay. Items number 3, strategic priority issues. There are none for today. Item number 4, major organizational items. There are none for today. Item number 5, organizational policy and bylaw items. 5.1, hospitality policy 25.01. Be presented by Peter McCracken, Deputy CAO. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Worship. As you know, this policy was presented in draft at Committee of the Whole last week. The intent of the policy is to provide direction and guidance with respect to hospitality expenses that support the objectives of the municipality. I won't go into too much further detail there, and there's a recommended motion in your package as well as the draft hospitality policy, and I'm free to answer any questions that council has.
Thank you very much, sir. The recommended motion is that council approve the hospitality policy 25-01. If somebody be so kind to make the motion. Deputy Mayor Gould, seconded by Councillor Lockhart. Any discussion or questions on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Item 5.2, student bursary policy 25-02. Mr. McCracken, you have the floor again. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Again, this policy was presented to council at the Committee of the Whole last week. The intent of the bursary is to support high school students who are going on to other academic endeavors in our 7 high schools in Cumberland County. In recent years, bursaries have been provided to those schools in the amount of $1,000 per school. The only change from last week's draft policy was the removal of 6D at the recommendation of council. Otherwise, there's a motion in your package, and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. McCracken. So the recommended motion is that council approve the student bursary policy 25-02. Movers for that motion, please. First by Councillor Telling, seconded by Councillor Fromm. Any discussion or questions on this? Go ahead, Councillor Lee. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question around if your son is graduating. So it can be a different municipal representative, correct? It could be you or somebody else.
Mr. McCracken, to Councillor Lee.
Your Worship, to Councillor Lee. So are you, sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question.
My apologies.
Go ahead, Councillor Lee.
Your Worship, thank you. Number 8, will invite a municipal representative to assist in the awarding of the bursary. Oh, sorry. My apologies. I read it wrong.
Okay, we're good to go.
That was an easy one.
Thank you.
That was easy. We got the answer with the question. Good stuff. Anyone else have any comments on this? Oh, okay, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Gould, item 5.3, is that where we're at? Yes. Why do I have you marked down here? Okay, good. I thought I had it marked in the right spot. Go ahead. You may now remove yourself to the gallery.
Nice brief job, Peter. Way to go being brief, Peter.
Okay. Item 5.3, first reading, bylaw to amend the LUB 25-01 to amend the requirements surrounding the development of undersized lots. Go ahead, Mr. Director Boone. You have the floor.
Thank you, worship. The gauntlet has been dropped, so. So, your worship, we've had a lot of conversation around this at COW, but we have to present it in a format here that gets the first reading on the table. So, there's a couple, and there would be a couple of the sketches I just wanted to review quickly. So, just quickly review, legislative authority for us to do anything in respect to all of the elements of lot sizes, areas, yards is all under the MGA. And any amendment to land use bylaw has to be in accordance with our policy. All of our review in this particular item, your worship, is aligned with that process. Again, this is a bit of an eye chart, but I want to just focus really on things that are to the right on the chart. We have several changes that are happening within the land use bylaw. The one I'm focusing on here is the existing undersized lot section that is in our land use bylaw and the highlights of what we're changing under the bylaw that's in front of you that was in the package. Minimum lot sizes are now based on the ability to support an on-site sewage disposal system or an OSS as determined by the Department of Environment. In the past, your worship, we had a minimum lot size of 900 square meters. If you have a lot that existed prior to the bylaws and under the Municipal Government Act, you will be eligible to apply for new development on lot provided it existed per the bylaw outline and regardless of the size of the lot. The approval that will monitor or oversee all of that, excuse you, your worship, is the ability to get your on-site sewage disposal. Lot coverage, this is one that we've heard commonly from folks in the process. Lot coverage is increasing from 25% to 10. All setbacks shall be no less than 3 meters. The only stipulation I'll make, obviously, we have changed the wording since we came to council committee of the whole. All setbacks shall be no less than 3 meters for lots without access to central wastewater disposal. Reason being is we do have undersized lots in some of our communities that have sewer systems. And so we didn't want it to stop them from being able to be developed by creating setbacks that are larger in our urban centers like Parsboro, Pugwash, Spring Hill, and River Hibbert that have sewer systems in place. So that is a clarification from what was presented to committee of the whole. Just wanted to highlight that. Shoreline buffer is still maintained in accordance with section 4.16. And waterfront lots shall maintain a maximum height. One thing we've heard throughout the process and from staff with applicants is the development of new or replacement of buildings on the waterfront lots in our cottage and residential or recreational residential areas is the height has allowed a lot of development, has been impacting views and vistas for many folks. So we have clarified that in the bylaw. This is a key change. Conversations had with committee of the whole. This is the change which will allow the expansion of existing main buildings, and what we have not brought forward in this bylaw is the reduction of the shoreline or watercourse buffer for new development. This is specifically for existing buildings, and this wording is very specific that any addition cannot and does not further reduce existing distance from the top of the bank of a watercourse or shoreline to the main building. Very specific. And to reinforce the conversations and the discussion that were held at COW. Examples that I showed previously, these have been edited a little bit. The difference being is now we're maintaining our existing 30.5 meter shoreline buffer from top of bank. This is basically showing you that if an existing building is within that shoreline buffer, as long as it maintains the setback that exists from the top of the bank, it can be approved as an addition. These are just examples of what we could not approve for information in the package. Next slide, Peter, please. So lots with existing development, existing maintained, we're showing now that you have the new 3 meter setbacks. The watercourse setback must be maintained. A little nuance of this sketch to the left, your worship, and to members of council, is a 30.5 meter buffer. We're asking in this bylaw that even if you happen to have a waterfront lot and you're a little further back, your expansion still must maintain that distance. So in effect, you could have a larger buffer than what's required in the bylaw, but in this case, we're not allowing development to get closer. Some people may see that as a little bit unfair, but I think it's a good compromise in this process. And then the example here to the right on your screen is a clear example of someone that's in the buffer, but they want to do a proposed expansion, but they have to maintain what exists. So in that case, we use that example of 15 meters, not to confuse the conversation we had about the 15-meter buffer, but this is the existing setback. One more, Peter. Thank you. And just quickly, this is what happens if you have a vacant lot that is undersized, because we have a number of undersized lots that would have been approved through a full subdivision process over the years. If you have a new lot that's going to be developed and it's considered undersized, you must maintain that 30.5 meter setback from the shoreline. Those other setbacks will be adjusted as per the undersized lots that I talked about earlier. So, to bring this home, no financial implications directly to the municipality until we see new development, which can increase property assessments, thus generating additional tax revenue. This is one thing we've heard about people being able to expand on undersized lots. I do anticipate we'll have a fair number of applicants that will be taking advantage of these changes and asking us a lot of questions, and will help guide them through the development process. The environmental implications I've talked about in previous meetings. The key here is that we are not touching the coastline elevations. They do not change in this, and we're not reducing the setback for new development. It's only to allow existing developments to maintain that setback. So I think it's really important to reinforce that. Community engagement. We did something a little unique in this process. As you remember, we asked for some community engagement input in advance of us creating the first reading report. It does not preclude people from having input at the public hearing stage, and we did receive 14 inputs. And to quickly summarize them, Your Worship, because we received them right up until yesterday. 14 letters received in support of the changes. We had 3 letters in opposition. The opposition was really focused on us changing that watercourse buffer, or the setback, to 30.5, which, when we asked for the input, that was the intent. So when that changed, I think the folks that had concerns were addressed by not touching that buffer. And I think we should be to the motion, Peter, please.
Great, thank you very much. The recommended motion is that council approve first reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 25-01 to amend the requirements surrounding the development of undersized lots and schedule a public hearing for the proposed amendments. If somebody would like to make that motion. Councillor Strong, seconder for the motion. Councillor Fromm. Okay, anyone have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. I guess you're still here, aren't you? 5.4. You're here again and again by the looks of things. 5.4, first reading, bylaw to amend the LUB 25-02 to rezone a portion of PID number 2506-6606 between 292 and 354 Smith Road in Upper Napan. Go ahead.
Contrary to popular belief, I do get tired of hearing my own voice.
Well, I'm sure we'll put that to
First
a vote
reading,
this
Your
time.
Worship, application was submitted by Compass Minerals. They're the operator of the salt plant on the Smith Road. Put this in context, if you look at the site plan to the right, Compass Minerals, the main plant, is on the opposite side of the road. The rezoning that's being considered is on the lower part of the Smith Road. Currently, lands that are zoned agricultural. It's active farmland, pasture, or hay and crop fields. Our friends at Compass are asking for this rezoning because agricultural zones do not permit industrial type uses. And even though this is going to be a very small impact on the lands that are being rezoned, it does require a zoning because it's not an existing use on the lands. Where on the opposite side of the road where Compass Minerals are, it is zoned agricultural, but they are an existing non-conforming use. So they can be there and they can actually expand through a site plan agreement. So this is to make sure that we are setting them up for success, going through the public process and making sure this aligns with policy. So this is just a rezoning of a portion of the PID. Brought this map into context because we have had some folks talk to us about agricultural land and the lack of it or the abundance of it within Cumberland County. The red dot on the screen is the subject property, and we have had some questions from the staff at the Provincial Planning Office that when we look at doing rezonings from agricultural to other uses, we've done it on a couple occasions with rural industrial. I just want to give a perspective that in this particular community neighborhood, there's a significant amount of agricultural land, and we're only looking at changing a very small portion of that. These are just some pictures of the neighborhood. The property is, as I mentioned, farmland. The picture to the right shows what an existing wellhead looks like. This is the existing ones that they have at the plant now. All the piping they're going to have in this situation is actually going to be underground. They have a permit already in place from the Department of Highways Public Works to run the pipe under the road to the plant. And what this source does is allows them to put water into the well, the brine well, bring the salt water up as part of their process. So natural process, they have in place the mineral rights to do this. So just trying to put in context that there's not a big industrial type facility built on the site. It's very unobtrusive, and in most cases will be fenced off, a small area, and farming still occurs around the property even though it's been rezoned. Quickly, considerations. Compass Minerals is a large employer in the county with 55 employees out there. Greatly contributes positively to the local economy, and they are a large industrial taxpayer. So been there like 60 years. Environmental implications, it's only going to impact a very small portion of the farmland, as I mentioned. I've shown the map just to give you some idea around the amount of farmland in the area in general. And this is kind of a natural process using a natural resource and using a process that's been approved and monitored closely. So community engagement, if council chooses to move the first reading forward, we'll follow the MGA, we'll advertise appropriately on the website. We still do our notices through Facebook, and we do circulate still notices in the paper. We only have to do one now under our process. And secondly, we put a planning notice on the site as well. So, Your Worship, the recommendation is there before you and aligns with the bylaw, simply a mapping change, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So the recommended motion is the council approve first reading of the bylaw to amend the land use bylaw 25-02 to rezone a portion of PID number 25066606 from agricultural AG zone to the rural industrial IRUR zone, and to schedule a public hearing for the proposed amendment. If somebody would like to make that motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gould, seconded by Councillor Lockhart. Any questions or discussion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm assuming that the plant owns that land now and they just lease it for farm, or they're intending to buy that land?
Your Worship, back to Deputy Mayor Gould.
Go ahead.
We have a letter on file from Bacon Farms Limited. They own the property and they have an agreement in place, and Compass Minerals has the mineral rights under the ground to access the salt deposits. So it's owned by Bacon Farms Limited. They have provided a letter supporting and allowing Compass Minerals to go forward with the application.
Thank you very much.
I'll make one quick comment on that. I believe too that the reason for this is that the only other option for Compass Minerals would be to try and not be able to, but it would be very difficult. But they're surrounded at the rear by marshlands above Blair, at the headwaters of Blair's Lake. And there's a lot of wells and a lot of infrastructure. They've used up basically all of their upland on that side of the road. So this is a much more viable option than trying to impact marshlands and water supplies and whatever. So I believe to be the case.
Yeah, Your Worship, I can respond is that this, based on their mineral rights and the geology, this shows where the easiest and the best resource location is. And it can be a very unobtrusive application of their process to get to the minerals.
Oh, good, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, call for the motion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you very much. 5.5, first reading, development agreement for 2 King Street, Spring Hill. Mr. Boone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Information certainly in your package. This is a little bit unique. It's not a rezoning. This would be the full council here's first exposure to a development agreement. So the difference with a development agreement versus a rezoning, Your Worship, with the members of council, is that we have a process. It becomes like a contract with the property owner as opposed to very specific guidance in the LUB. Policy exists to put this in place, but what this allows us to do is be very specific on criteria we put on this site specific. The reason this has come forward to us is the property is zoned low-density residential, but our bylaw permits commercial development on our low zones by development agreement. So the owner of the property purchased this building. It's an existing commercial building, but because it's been vacant for a period of time, it just can't convert back to a retail or commercial use once it's been vacant for more than 1 year. So the process now is you have to follow the complete document. So what it brings us to is they want to put it was formerly an operating retail and small engine repair shop, and the proposal is to bring forward is to put a retail shop. Choice Nuts Tire and Auto Parts, they exist in the community. They're on the main street. This is a building they own, and they want to redevelop and look to put the business on site. So the things we can do under the development agreement are listed there. I won't go through them in details, but the development agreement is attached to your package as well. It gets very specific. We talk about things like signage, parking, screening from residential areas. They are proposing, as you can see on the site plan, some accessory buildings. We're very specific on what those accessory buildings can look like and how they're placed on the site, and right down to the aesthetics of needing siding and have to be skirted and all of that good stuff. So, surrounding context, as I mentioned, the RLO zone permits this. It's actually located along our new trucking route, and the former council had approved Lisgar as our trucking route to the business park and beyond. So it is on a well-traveled road, and for any deliveries they should happen to get, they will be on the truck route. So this is one of the reasons we considered this an appropriate development agreement. Corner lot means additional development requirements. So we've put some criteria on that site plan where it's a lot of open area. We will be restricting the access to and from, especially King Street. So considerations, none specific. Obviously, the redevelopment of the site will enhance commercial taxation value of the property. It's an existing underutilized commercial building. No specific environmental implications have been brought forward. It's on sewer and water that are municipally supplied. And community engagement, if council approves it, same with all our processes in planning, even though it's a development agreement, we'll do a proper appropriate notice on the website to start, and we'll schedule a public hearing should council give it first reading. So, Your Worship, happy to answer any questions, and the recommendation is before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boone. The recommended motion is that council approve first reading of the development agreement for 2 King Street, Spring Hill, PID number 25231945, and schedule a public hearing for the proposed development agreement. If someone would like to make this motion, please. Moved by Councilor McCormick, seconded by Councilor Lockhart. All those in favor? Whoop, discussion, sorry. Anybody have any comments on this? Go ahead, Councilor Strong.
I have a question. In the picture, there's a green building right to the right of the existing building. That
Yep.
Is that an apartment building?
It's the seniors complex. Okay. And it's across, it's separated by King Street, Councilor. Sorry, Your Worship, back to Councilor Strong.
Go ahead.
It's separated by King Street,
Okay.
and this information, it's provincially owned and was recently renovated. But the majority of the access to those residences on the opposite side of the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Number 6, business issues. Oh, sorry, number 5.6. I got a check mark, one spot too early. I'm sorry about that. Bylaw to regulate the operation and placement of food trucks. Councilor Lockhart, go ahead.
Am I on?
Yeah?
Yep.
Red light, good
Yeah.
to go.
Well, the motion's there that I'd like to put forward. I know there's some opposition to that, but I'm still moving forward with that motion. And I just believe it's to level the playing field a little bit in Spring Hill. There's 5 existing restaurants. We just had one close. and just trying to make the playing field a little bit fairer for the existing ones. They probably pay over $50,000 combined in tax, commercial tax, and probably employ over 20 people.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
The recommended motion is that council direct staff to draft a bylaw to regulate the operation and placement of food trucks, including a reasonable licensing fee for presentation and council's consideration at a future meeting of the Committee of the Whole. So if someone would like to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Lockhart, seconder for the motion, Deputy Mayor Gould. Any comments or discussion? Councillor Redmond first, then Deputy Mayor Gould. You are slightly ahead of him.
I am not in favor of this being a county-wide bylaw or regulation. They serve a great purpose in the rural areas for festivals. Right now, there is no restaurant in Wallace, and we have a food truck that comes to Wallace once a week or once every 2 weeks to give people the option of not having to cook their supper or whatever. And they were also there for the winter carnival. So I will be voting against the motion.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Gould.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for some clarification, I know I had some discussion with Councillor Lockhart about this and what he envisioned and how he seemed to think it might work. And I just wanted, for clarification, you had kind of a number in your head that a vendor would pay, and that would allow them to set up in Cumberland County. Is that, it wasn't specific to one area, or is that how you had envisioned it?
Yes, 1 year, well, that was my suggestion, would be a one-time yearly registration fee. And that's very similar to other, I talked to some people in HRM, I know it's a lot different there, but same thing there. Plus, most people in HRM operate on private property and pay a very big rental fee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Does anyone else like to say anything? Go ahead, CAO.
Thank you, Worship. Just a technicality and perhaps just to address Councillor Redmond's comment about it applying countywide. I do see in Councillor Lockhart's memo that he says he'd like to see the bylaw have flexibility to apply only in areas the municipality council feels advisable. So that flexibility was suggested, just so we've got complete information. That's all.
Councillor Redmond, go ahead.
The other issue that I have with it is the policing and putting staff to, who you're going to put as staff to look after who submits the license, looks after the licenses, and are they going to drive around wherever they are to see if they do have that license? Is that taking up another employee for the little bit that we're going to get off of the very few food trucks that we have in the county or that come in from the county? The one I spoke to came from New Brunswick. He said there is, the only place that he has to pay is, I think it was Pictou. And he said he's never been asked for nobody's policed him on it, but they had to pay a fee in order to go in that county.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. I'll now ask for the vote. Councillor McCormick didn't have her hand up, did she, just to make sure?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, good, just making sure. It's the 5-second, 4-second time delay there, so sometimes it's difficult to make sure of that, so. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those contrary minded, raise your hand. The motion is defeated. Thank you very much. Contrary.
You're against?
Yes.
Okay. So that's
7-2. Yep. 6, business issues. 6.1, Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment. Peter McCracken will lead us on this one. Go ahead, sir.
Nowhere the airtime that Glenn got tonight, but I'm trying my best here. Thank you, Worship. Really quickly, back in December, Committee of the Whole made a motion to forward the recommendation to have Christy Blackie appointed as a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. That should have gone on December's council meeting. I missed it, and so here we are in January, bringing it forward. So, as you know, we have an Accessibility Advisory Committee that's, whose task is to put together an accessibility plan, and they're currently doing that, and we'll be bringing a plan to council hopefully very soon. We're recommending that Ms. Blackie be part of the committee representing the village of Pugwash, as it is a joint committee with the 2 villages and the county. There's a recommended motion in your package.
Thank you very much. The recommended motion is the council to appoint Christy Blackie in her capacity as acting clerk for the village of Pugwash to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. If someone would like to make that motion, Councilor Hotelling, seconder for the motion, Councilor Redmond. Any comments or questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. McCracken. 6.2, active living and the recreation strategy will be presented by Ally McCormick. She has been waiting for a very long time to get to the center of the stage. Go ahead, Ally.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last week, Council received a presentation from myself and our Active Living Coordinator, Carolyn Bulwark, on our draft Active Living and Recreation Strategy. The purpose of that presentation was just to give some background on the strategy, a brief summary, and provide Council with some opportunities for questions. And so the draft Active Living Strategy, Active Living and Recreation Strategy is included in the meeting package as well as the recommended motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions of Council.
Thank you very much. The recommended motion is the council receive the proposed active living and recreation strategy for 2024 to 2029. Somebody like to move it? Thank you very much. Moved by Councilor Hotelling, seconded by Councilor Strong. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Worth
the wait, Alan? Worth the wait?
Information items. 7.11. Councilor Hotelling, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to recognize the wonderful volunteers that put on our community meal in Pugwash every Wednesday. I was able to attend one recently, and there was a wonderful large crowd, and so many volunteers that I don't think I could list them all off. There was somebody handing out utensils and buns and all kinds of things, and just really good community gathering space and conversations, and these things are just so important in small communities. So I just wanted to recognize those volunteers.
Thank you very much. I can now add to that and say that I saw lots of positive comments recently about it online, so job well done and kudos to the volunteers. 7.12, Councilor Lockhart. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to recognize the staff at the Dr. Carson Marion Murray Community Center for all their hard work and the great New Year's Eve celebration they put on for the children. I attended. It was a very great event. Lots of kids there. Everybody had a great time. And I also wanted to recognize Mr. Bill Reed from Poison Lake. Was honored for 35 years with Collingwood Fire Department, and adding Bill probably has another 30 years with the Spring Hill Fire Department. So, yeah, it was a very good evening, and I want to congratulate the fire department on having such a successful banquet also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always great to recognize our firefighters and the great work that they do throughout the county. So, 7.2, bylaw and policy review briefing. Mr. McCracken, you're back on the floor. I think you're now one ahead of Mr. Boone, but I'm not sure if anybody's keeping score today.
So, thank you, Your Worship, for just a couple more minutes of your time. I know we're running late tonight. So we have a number of briefings that we're going to bring to council. Some new councilors on on council this year. And so over the next few months, we'll be bringing some briefings on some existing major initiatives and projects. And the first is the municipal bylaw and policy review. I believe you were circulated a copy,
Back in the package or
a
something.
paper copy of a presentation.
There it is, yep.
If I had my arms long enough, I could do it, do the slideshow, but we'll go with the old-fashioned route here. So very quickly, in 2022, the municipality completed the Clear the Deck organizational review with the vision of moving forward as one municipality after the dissolution of the Spring Hill and Parsboro, towns of Spring Hill and Parsboro in 2015 and 16 respectively. Part of the review involved assembling a complete and accurate list of all active bylaws and policies for Cumberland, as well as both former towns of Spring Hill and Parsboro. Stantec, we went external and hired Stantec, who did a thorough policy and bylaw review on behalf of the municipality. A list of bylaws and policies which remain active for Cumberland, Parsboro, and Spring Hill was compiled, including recommendations on which ones needed additional review and which ones should be repealed, otherwise known as the ones from the two former towns. Additionally, there was an opportunity to identify bylaw and policy gap areas and subsequently propose ways to address these. Staff is using these findings in the Stantec report to move forward with confidence that we have a set of bylaws that are current and relevant. If you go on to slide number 3. Quickly, in terms of implementation and recommendations, there are a few areas of work we have been concentrating on. One is the repeal of outdated bylaws and policy. So you recall, for those returning council members, that in July 2024, council passed an omnibus repeal bylaw that repealed dozens of outdated and obsolete bylaws, the vast majority of which were from the former towns of Parsboro and Spring Hill. And still left is to repeal, next are several policies that have been deemed redundant, and they'll be brought to council for repeal as well. On the 4th slide, another current recommendation is to amend existing policies and bylaws to make them current, and thus far, council's been very busy in that regard. We've provided updates to our, council's approved updates to our ice-related activities, protective helmet policy, expenditure policy, code of conduct, ice allocation, flag, video surveillance, and conflict of interest policies. So that's been some hard work from staff and council on those. And slide 5, the final area to consider is to consider new policies that will address some gaps that were identified in the review. It's things such as mobile vending, cybersecurity, and media relations. And just wrapping up, over the next coming months, we'll have some additional briefings to inform council on some of our ongoing important initiatives. Clearing the Rural Internet Project, Hub Fire Model, surplus property. You can read the list as it goes on there. So those will be brought to your attention, and briefings will be provided by staff on those as well. That's a quick overview of what we've been doing with the bylaw and policy review, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Councilor Redmond, go ahead.
Well, I saw rural internet on there, so I think I can bring my concern up
Go ahead.
because it was on there. I had an individual from Wallace call me yesterday in regards to there's wires going up in Wallace. They were told that it was fiber op and the county was paying for it. And that's what the linesman said. So just thinking that staff might want to get a hold of them, not to be telling the people of the county that we are paying for that installation. Yeah.
Mr. Herrick, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Boone is the liaison with the internet folks, and I'm sure he'll bring that to their attention.
Yeah.
They meet every week, so every second week, and I'm sure he'll bring that.
I just thought it was important to bring up at this time, because
Thank
we
you.
don't want people to get the wrong idea, so.
Should we bring Mr. Boone forward again? No. Okay, that concludes our business for today. If I could have a motion to adjourn. So moved by Deputy Mayor Gould. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much, folks, and have a safe trip home.
For Christ's sake, no. Can I say that?